Welcome back, everyone. So, fun fact, this episode marks the halfway point of the series, and at the rate I'm going, we'll definitely finish this, eventually. So, right off the bat, something interesting about this episode is that it doesn't start things off by just jumping back into the story. It instead begins with a sort of montage of moments revolving around this episode's titular character, Matsuda, and none of them are all that flattering. It begins with this clip from episode 7, wherein the chief chastises Matsuda for being so excited about the utility belts that Ryuzaki had just given them.
Quiet, Matsuda! Knock it off!
Yes, sir.
From there, it switches to episode 17, where we see Aizawa telling Misa and Matsuda to
stop messing around!
Sorry, Aizawa.
And following that, we head back to this clip from episode 16, where Ryuzaki smacks Matsuda's hand.
Matsuda! Please don't. Matsuda?
Which I've since found out was a translation snafu, wherein in the original Japanese dub, Ryuzaki didn't use the correct honorific when addressing Matsuda, which is why he repeated his name back like that. But anyway, a theme begins to present itself as we take a look back at these scenes from previous episodes, one that serves to show that, well, everybody hates Matsuda. Or maybe I wouldn't go that far, but I would definitely argue that Matsuda stays getting shat on. And while part of me definitely feels for the guy, another part of me kinda understands their frustration with him. His childlike excitement, his easygoing personality, his inability to filter the shit he says. I could see how that might serve to rub people the wrong way, especially if this is just a thing that he's doing constantly. Like, from the outside looking in, I really like Matsuda. I think he can be both funny and endearing, but that's me watching with no skin in the game. Because if I had to work with this dude on something as serious and really as dangerous as this investigation, I'd have very, very different feelings about him. But anyway, the next clip they show is from the previous episode, wherein the chief says,
after all, the last thing I want is to be dead weight.
Which Matsuda takes note of, and I like that because he really does just want to contribute to this investigation, and he's very much aware of the fact that he currently isn't. Light was the one who discovered the connection to Yotsuba. The chief helped bolster that theory by noticing that the majority of murders were concentrated on the weekends. Mogi's killing it with research, and Ryuzaki is out here recruiting new people for the task force. Anyway, the only one who's really not doing anything right now is Matsuda, and he wants to change that. But given his track record so far, which amounts to practically nothing, Ryuzaki just ends up treating him like an assistant by saying,
"Could you get me another cup of coffee?"
Which, quite frankly, is rude as hell, but I mean, it's Ryuzaki, so it's to be expected. Anyway, this little opening ends with Matsuda telling himself,
I want to help too. I want to contribute to the case.
Whilst being surrounded by these somewhat exaggerated depictions of the other members of the task force, plus Misa. It appears as though these are all of the people who have, at one point or another, either yelled at, talked shit about, made fun of, or just outright laid hands on Matsuda. Hence the absence of both Mogi and Watsuri, given the fact that the former barely speaks as is, and the latter's polite to pretty much everyone. Well, when he's not torturing people. Anyway, one of the things I love about this shot is the fact that they're all literally looking down on him, which is meant to illustrate the idea of how he feels that they all figuratively look down on him. In addition to that, I love the fact that in his mind, for whatever reason, Aizawa has a bobo afro, even though, you know, it's really not that big. Furthermore, he has Ryuzaki just licking a donut like he's fucking Orochimaru licking a kunai. It's just silly. But yeah, with all of that out of the way,
Episode 19, Matsuda.
So the episode proper starts off with our girl Misa Mane back at work, filming a new movie or TV show or something. And interestingly enough, she's sharing a scene with our boy Hideki Ryuga. Y'all remember him, right?
Freshman representative Hideki Ryuga.
No, not him.
Hideki Ryuga! I swear he's perfect!
There we go. Dude feels like a recurring meme at this point. Anyway, as Misa and him are busy filming, Matsuda's mind wanders elsewhere, turning his attention to the Yotsuba group's main office because, of course, they're literally within walking distance of it while filming, and, of course, it's Friday, which, as established in the previous episode, is when the Yotsuba group meets up to discuss who they'll be killing.
Well, isn't that convenient?
You're telling me, Jerry. Anyway, we get yet another series of flashbacks as Matsuda recalls the many instances wherein the members of the task force collectively shat on him, which ultimately prompts him to throw caution and, honestly, logic to the wind as he abandons his post and rushes towards the Yotsuba group's main office, which... And look, I'm not even 100% mad at him for doing this. Dude is like 25 or 26, and while he's not a kid, I can definitely, at least somewhat, understand this sort of rash behavior. especially when you feel like you finally have an opportunity to prove yourself to people who you feel look down on you. And you know what? It's not even really a feeling. Like, yes, I would argue that the chief and Aizawa don't actually look down on him. Do they oftentimes get annoyed with him? Sure, but they still respect him as their colleague. Light and Ryuzaki, however, are a different story, and the comments they made in the previous episode when they thought he couldn't hear them prove that.
Matsuda's acting stupid again.
Well, that is his specialty.
They think he's a dumbass, and unfortunately, this kind of behavior only serves to bolster that argument. But nevertheless, his heart is in the right place, and honestly, had Ryuzaki just taken him seriously when he asked what he could do to help out more, this probably wouldn't be happening. So yes, it is Matsuda's fault, but I'd argue that it's not just his fault. Anyway, dude makes it to the office and manages to sneak in by crawling past the security guard. Let me say that again. He manages to sneak into the building of a multi-million-dollar company by getting on his hands and knees and crawling past the one security guard that they have on duty. What the fuck kind of security is this? This is a massive business and this dude is all you got? Okay. Anyway, we transition back to Task Force headquarters where we meet back up with Light, who's currently staring absent-mindedly at the wall opposite him. The first thing we notice is that he has that look in his eyes again, that same glazed over look we saw back in episode 1. However, where his mind was focused on how bored he was back then, now his introspection is causing him to question whether or not he was, in fact, Kira.
Would I punish evildoers and criminals if I could kill by just seeing a name and face?
Yes. Yes, you would, Light. You 100% would, my guy, but please go on.
I mean, it's true that there are lots of people around that the world could frankly do without.
And that's interesting because I imagine most people would agree with that. While how we define who fits into that category might differ depending on who you are and what you believe, I imagine that the vast majority of individuals would agree that there are certain people that this world would just be better without. Having thoughts like that aren't inherently wrong. However, they become an issue if you decide to act on those beliefs. Because, as I just said, how we define who fits into that category differs depending on who you are and what you believe. And therefore, just because you think the world would be better without certain people, it doesn't give you the right to go out and try to get rid of said people.
I don't think I'd become a murderer just to change the world.
And this is also super interesting to me because you did. You absolutely did. At the very first opportunity you had to try it out, you hesitated all of however long it took you to get home from school. And only a few hours after that, you did it again. And sure, you had a mini breakdown after the second one, but within a week, you had killed scores of people, hundreds, if not thousands. You were reveling in that shit, my guy. And yet, here you are thinking,
Ain't no way. Ain't no fucking way.
and I'm not saying all of this to talk shit about him or anything. I just find it fascinating that without his memories, he really believes that he wouldn't do this, even though that couldn't be further from the truth.
There's no way anyone could murder so many people and not have any memory of it.
That's odd that you would draw the line at not being able to remember it, when the idea of being able to kill people with just a name and face is equally as ridiculous as having no memory of ever having done it. Anyway, Watsuri chimes in and pulls everyone's attention by informing them that a detective by the name of Eraldo Coil has just received a request to investigate and reveal the identity of L. Who is Eraldo Coil, you might ask?
Isn't Eraldo Coil supposed to be the second greatest detective in the world?
You are right, which really is just kind of silly. Like, how does one become the second greatest detective in the world? I mean, I get the idea that if there's a first, there has to be a second, but like, is it a tier system based on the number of crimes you solved, the complexity of the case, how quickly you solved it? Like, where can I find the leaderboard for best detectives in this world? Anyway, Watsuri tells the group that this information was requested by Masahiko Kira, who you might remember from the Yotsuba group. This new information puts the group in a bit of a tizzy, as they're now concerned about Eraldo Coil investigating them while they investigate Yotsuba. But Ryuzaki quickly assuages any fears as he reveals the fact that
The detective known as Eraldo Coil is me.
he goes on to say that not only is he L and Eraldo Coil, but he's also the third greatest detective, because of course he is, going by the pseudonym Deneuve.
It's been my experience that people who try to find me usually fall for this.
And I mean, that's hella smart. Like, I gotta give credit where credit is due, because that's a great way to keep your identity safe. Also, the fact that he can manage doing the work of 3 top-tier detectives simultaneously is wild as hell.
I'll give you this strawberry if you keep it a secret, okay?
The fuck? I mean, Ryuzaki offering the strawberry isn't too weird to me, but it's the fact that Mogi seems to almost gleefully take it that kind of threw me off. Like the chief lets out a little grunt and takes a step back when Ryuzaki offers it. But Mogi says, and leans forward to take it, and then instead of actually eating it, he puts it in his fucking pocket. Cause why? What the fuck? Anyway, we head back to Yotsuba and see that Matsuda is just wandering around this place looking for something, which is honestly insane given how big this building is. Like, he doesn't even know who he's looking for at this point.
Maybe I should leave while I still have a chance.
Yes, you 100% should leave because this is stupid, my guy. Do you know how ridiculously lucky you'd have to be to find the exact people you need to find in order to get the information that you're looking for? It'd be basically impossible.
Not this again.
Look on the bright side, at least it falls on the weekend. We never know how long these confidential meetings will go on for.
How convenient.
How very, very convenient, but whatever. Anyway, it's worth pointing out that in this scene, Matsuda actually gets his own color scheme in the same vein as Kira and L, and where theirs are red and blue respectively, his is yellow, another primary color, which I feel definitely goes to state his overall significance in this story. But anyway, after these two dudes hop on the elevator, he takes note of where it stops and makes a mad dash up to the 19th floor. We then head back to the task force where the team is discussing having Ivor act as Eraldo Coil in order to get close to the Yotsuba group. Meanwhile, Weddy will be hacking into the Yotsuba group's main office so that the task force can get a better idea of what's going on in there, so that they can hopefully find solid evidence of a connection between Yotsuba and Kira. All in all, it's a solid plan, as long as nobody fucks it up. Which reminds me, what's Matsuda doing again?
Damn it, I can't hear them clearly. If only I could hear just one thing. Kira! There it is! Kira, they said it!
Okay, you heard them say it, and that's awesome. You now have confirmation that they are, at the very least, working with Kira. But honestly, bro, I think it's time you get the hell out of there.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Who the hell are you?
A dead man, clearly. But really, what prompted them to open the door? Like, do they just periodically open it to check to see if people are outside? I mean, I can appreciate the heightened caution, but it just seems kind of random that two of them got up to open the door like that. Unless Matsuda was stupid enough to have been scratching up against the door or something, which honestly, I wouldn't put it past him. But anyway, we then cut back to the task force just in time to hear Ryuzaki say,
"Please be sure not to act impulsively out of panic or haste, and don't take matters into your own hands."
Just as Watsuri chimes in and says that Matsuda has activated his utility belt and the signal is coming from within the Yotsuba main office, prompting Ryuzaki to tell everyone to ignore everything he just said, and ends with him rightfully saying,
"Matsuda, you idiot."
We then switch back to Matsuda and, to his credit, without missing a beat, he immediately switches to his cover and tells him that he's there to pitch Misa as their new spokesperson.
I just dropped by to ask if your company would be interested in using our top multi-talented star, Misa Amane, as your new spokesperson.
And I mean, he's still dumb for having done this, but I can at least appreciate him quickly reverting to his cover as her manager, especially given the fact that he's likely under the impression that at least one of these men is Kira. So he's gotta be terrified right now. So kudos to him on that, if absolutely nothing else. However, the real question is, will his cover be enough? I suppose time will tell, but for now, welcome back to How to Use It. First up, if the Death Note is stolen and the owner is killed by the thief, its ownership will automatically be transferred to the thief. Not too much to analyze in regard to this, as it aligns with what we've seen thus far. Kind of. What I mean by that is, while Light didn't steal the notebook from Misa back in episode 13, he still had it in his possession when she gave up ownership in episode 15, and as such, he became the owner of that Death Note. And what is death if not technically relinquishing ownership of your Death Note? So, I mean, this rule makes sense to me. Next up, when the same name is written on more than 2 Death Notes, the note which was first filled in will take effect, regardless of the time of death. So this one's simple enough, it's basically like first come, first served, but the part stating regardless of the time of death is interesting because you could potentially cockblock someone from killing another person. For example, when Rim thought that Misa was in danger of being killed by Light, this rule implies that she could have just prevented that by writing down Misa's name in her Death Note and including a time of death that's, say, a minute before she's supposed to naturally die, and then Misa would have just been forever protected from being killed by a death note. This would also work out in Rim's favor because she'd never have to put herself in a position where she'd have to kill herself by saving Misa, because Misa would be safe since her time of death would be fixed in place via the death note. But I have to imagine there's something in place to prevent that, because this rule kind of seems world-breaking if we take it at face value. But I digress. Anyway, when we head back, we find that Matsuda has been taken to a different room by two of the Yotsuba members, Shimura and Hatori.
Please take Misa into consideration.
I love the look on their face. It's like they're really not buying this shit at all. Or even if they do believe him, they still need to decide whether or not it's in their best interest to let him live, because there's literally no telling what he managed to overhear. And Matsuda is well aware of this, acknowledging the fact that these two are simply acting as guards while the rest discuss what to do with him.
I wonder if the emergency signal got through. Even if it did, will Ryozaki come and save me?
That's sad. I feel like we can all agree that it's a given that they would do anything in their power to save one of their own, but this man honestly believes that they think so little of him that he has to wonder if they'll even bother making the effort to save him. Like, I don't know, it was one thing with Ukita because he was already dead. There was nothing to be gained by going there other than throwing away their own lives. So Ryuzaki asks that they stay where it's safe. But Matsuda isn't dead, and there's still time to save him, especially since he wouldn't have given out his real name, and they don't know whether this kidda can kill with just a face alone. But regardless, the fact that he has to question it at all is insane to me. I don't think any other task force member would doubt that someone would, at the very least, try to rescue them if they were in this situation. It's messed up, and it speaks to how he feels about himself after months of being talked down to and dismissed. He doesn't even know if they think he's worth saving. That's... damn. Okay, but why does everyone have the same ringtone?
Go ahead. You can answer it. Don't say that you're here, though. Make sure we can listen in on the conversation.
So that's smart on their part. Him receiving a random phone call could potentially give them a lot of insight on who he is. For example, if the person calling refers to him as Matsuda, then that would be a pretty glaring red flag. However, luckily for him, that's not the case.
Yo, Matsui.
Ryozaki.
It's me, Asahi. It's been a while, buddy.
Yo, I love when Ryuzaki does one of his little voices. He really goes all out with it. But anyway, the conversation itself is relatively short, as Ryuzaki, or Asahi, asks a couple of questions to ascertain whether or not Matsuda is with Misa, as well as gauging just how much trouble he's currently in.
Oh, what's the matter? Don't tell me your wallet is in trouble again.
Yeah, that's right. Big troubles with money.
So I will say that the way they're going about this conversation is very clever. Even if Matsuda's delivery makes it feel a little awkward, fortunately, it's not that much of a red flag, given the fact that he does have a legitimate reason to be nervous right now, since he was technically trespassing. I mean, Misa's manager or not, he broke the law, so him being nervous here makes a lot of sense. He could just be really concerned that they're going to call the cops on him. Anyway, the call ends and Matsuda jumps right back into his pitch. However, the two men really just aren't buying what he's selling, and I mean, rightfully so. It is weird that this dude just happened to wander up to the 19th floor of this building looking for someone to pitch this to. Like, there was no one else you ran into before getting here. And furthermore, why come here? Do you know one of us? Any of us? Do you even know what our specific jobs are? Like, you just happen to come up to this floor, to this specific office room, at this specific time to pitch to random people in our company? Like, what? But, I mean, luckily for him, when they do start to apply pressure by asking for proof, he's able to tell them that he can bring her to them once she's done filming, which he hopes will buy him some time.
I have to keep stalling them somehow.
We then switch back to Task Force headquarters where the team is deciding how best to handle the situation.
Well, if Matsuda dies, our suspicions about the Yotsuba group would be confirmed.
And I mean, he's not wrong. If Matsuda dies, then that pretty much confirms that these people are working with Kira, but still, I don't know. I suppose realistically there's not much they could do right now anyway. It's not a lack of wanting, it's just that without Misa they can't get in there to do anything. I mean, there are only 7 of them, and really what good would barging in there do aside from possibly getting them all killed? It's just nonsensical, so waiting and watching is about all anyone can do until Misa gets out. Anyway, we switch back to the Yotsuba group where they, too, are deciding how best to handle the situation.
What should we do? If it's a possibility, no matter how small, we'll have to kill him.
I can't say I necessarily disagree with that sentiment, but I also can't fully co-sign it either. For example, if he's just a manager for Misa Amane, then sure, you could kill him. No one's gonna bat an eye if he just randomly dies shortly after this. However, things get a little more complicated when you consider other options. For example, at one point it was mentioned that he could be a corporate spy, and if they're working under that assumption, then I would argue that they need to be more careful with what they decide to do here. Because if he is a corporate spy, then that means he was hired to look into you, which means that whoever hired him will notice if he just suddenly dies shortly after snooping around your office. And then there's also the third scenario, which is
he could be an undercover cop.
Which, if true, then killing him would be the worst possible option, because we've seen what happens when Kira goes after cops. Though Mito ends up responding to that comment by saying,
"No, that can't be it. The Japanese police have completely withdrawn support from the Kira case."
And I mean, he's right. While the chief, Mogi, and Matsuda are still working the case as detectives, they aren't aligned with the NPA anymore. So even though Matsuda is undercover, he's not technically an undercover cop. Which means that killing him won't elicit the same response that, say, killing Ukita did. That being said, it would still ultimately be the wrong move, as L would have even more evidence against them if Matsuda wound up dead. Anyway, this quick scene ends with Higuchi stating that regardless of who he is, they have no choice but to kill him, and no one objects to it. We then switch back to Matsuda, Shimura, and Hatori, with Hatori being the first one to break the silence in a pretty surprising way.
You know, now that I think about it, it might be good to have her as the face of our company.
Even his boy is like, the fuck? Which, I mean, it's fair. That was a weird shift in his attitude about the situation. But, I mean, I could also understand why he might feel that way. It's like the dude is here, he has photos of her, he's claiming she's doing a film nearby and that she'll call afterwards. Whether he's lying or not, we'll find out the truth soon enough, so what point is there in keeping all this hostile energy? If he's lying, we'll kill him. If he's not, it might be worth it to have her as our brand ambassador. I imagine this deal is the equivalent of having Kendall Jenner do an ad for Pepsi, or maybe not that specifically, but you get what I mean. Anyway, we transition to Misa after filming, and she immediately calls Light back. They talk for a bit, and then she gets a call from Matsuda, who, acting as her manager, tells her to come to the Yotsuba group's main office to discuss being in some of their ads. She happily agrees and makes her way over. Immediately after that, we focus on Ryuzaki and Light for a moment, as Ryuzaki says,
"There is a chance that we may be able to save Matsuda, but we won't be able to do it without Misa's help. She'll listen to you and do anything you say, won't she?"
And this is interesting because, as you may remember in episode 17, Light was adamant about not wanting to manipulate Misa.
I can't manipulate a woman's feelings like that.
Which, while stupid, was meant to exemplify his strong moral code or whatever. However, now we have a life or death situation with someone that everyone here knows. And it almost feels like yet another test from Ryuzaki. Testing him to see how he responds to this situation and whether or not he'll abandon, or maybe a better word would be compromise, his morals in order to save someone on the team. It's never confirmed that he's doing that, but I don't know, it's just a vibe I'm getting from this. And it would make sense if that's what he's doing. Like, if Light is willing to leverage Misa's feelings for him in order to save Matsuda's life, then Ryuzaki could easily come to him later and ask for him to do it again, saying something like, well, you were willing to do it to save Matsuda, so why not do it to save the dozens, hundreds, or thousands of potential victims that Kira will eventually kill if we don't stop him? Like, Light's whole thing about not manipulating her has always been kind of stupid, but I've already talked about it, so moving on. Anyway, we transition to Misa arriving at the Yotsuba group's main office.
I'm Misa. My only rule is I don't do nudes.
Which is like, okay, Misa, good to know where you draw the line, I guess. But yeah, with this, Matsuda has proven that he is, in fact, Misa's manager. However, that doesn't mean that he's in the clear. The issue still remains that they don't know what he heard, and therefore, to be safe, they should kill him. Hell, if anything, they have more of a reason to kill him now, since they can feel fairly certain that he's not a spy or a cop. He's just this girl's manager. That being said, this was obviously taken into consideration by the task force, as they had Misa say,
"Since Yotsuba's a big catch, I got the okay from our office to have a special reception."
Which leads us to our next scene, which is, well...
Good evening. We're very pleased to meet you.
Is it just me, or is this getting weird?
You think? I mean, they were just in a meeting deciding who they should kill for the week when this random person suddenly drops on in, claims to be this famous pop idol's manager, and then suddenly they find themselves at a special reception with a bunch of other young, cute girls ready to service them. It's a little weird, but realistically, it doesn't take too much to convince them, and so they start kicking back and relaxing in no time. With the food coming and the drinks flowing, Matsuda, who I should note is acting kind of tipsy himself, is able to find an opportunity to go to the bathroom, where he quickly calls Ryuzaki Ryuzaki and tells him,
"Listen, the 8 men who came here were having a meeting to determine who they get Kira to kill for them."
And shit, you know what? He did get a decent amount of information to them through this. They now know the identity of all 8 of these men who are currently working with Kira, something that would have likely taken a while to figure out otherwise. I imagine Kira meets with a lot of people throughout the week, so it might have taken a substantial amount of time to figure out which of his meetings was the Kira meeting. But now they know. Hell, they even know which room they meet in now. So while it was stupid on his part, let me make that very fucking clear, it still was overall beneficial. If nothing else, it saved them a lot of time. Anyway, Ryuzaki tells Matsuda that because they caught him snooping, they'll likely try to kill him soon. However, he seems to have a plan for how to prevent that from happening.
We may be able to save you, but for that to happen, you will have to die before they can kill you.
What?
Right? But Ryuzaki goes on to explain how that'll work. However, we're not privy to that conversation. Instead, we get to see it all play out. And while this whole sequence is a little wacky, it's also kind of cool. So we head back out to the party where the gentlemen are schmoozing it up with their young hosts.
And you know, our company is expanding.
And it's not the only thing that's expanding, if you catch my drift.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Anyway, as everyone's having a good old time, Matsuda comes lumbering out of the bathroom looking like something out of The Walking Dead. Like, he legit startles everyone in the room, but after a moment, he lifts his head and we can see that he's on full tilt right now. Or at least he's pretending to be.
Wow, I am so drunk.
Okay, buddy. Anyway, in his drunken stupor, he heads out to the balcony to give the people what they really want.
The moment you've all been waiting for, the Taro Matsui show!
As he then proceeds to hop up on the balcony railing, which, shit, drunk or not, is an insane thing to do, even more so when he kicks it up a notch and does a handstand. I mean, they are pretty high up. Like, I gotta give it to Matsuda on this one because that's actually super impressive. Anyway, by this point, he's got everyone's attention, and they're kind of freaking out. And to be fair, he's not exactly taking all of this lightly either, as we can see from the sweat marks pouring down the sides of his face. Unfortunately for him, though, it looks like his palms might have been sweaty too, because only a second later we see his hand slip and, well, Matsuda goes tumbling off the side of the building and, yeah, he dead. He big dead. You hear that big ass thump? You see that body? Even got this chick screaming while she looks on in horror. Or, wait a second, I know her. That's Wetty. And wait, that's not Matsuda, you know what, I can't, I'm sorry. Clearly, Matsuda isn't dead. See, what had happened was, immediately after falling, dude was picked up by the chief and Mogi, which, hell of a catch, my guys. That could have gone so wrong. Honestly, I'm still not 100% convinced that catch was actually possible. Like, that's gotta be the firmest bed I've ever seen. Because I feel like, realistically, the mattress would have just bent and he would have just kind of bounced off of it and kept falling. Like, I'm not a physicist and math ain't exactly my forte, but just, I don't know, man, something about that doesn't seem right to me, but screw it, we're gonna roll with it. So, in addition to catching him, they also threw a bag of something onto the ground, which gave it that satisfying bump. Anyway, back upstairs, the guys are freaking out. However, Misa just tells them that the girls will handle it and that they should just leave, but not before adding,
just don't forget about me for your next campaign, okay?
Which is just an insane thing to tack on after seeing a man plummet to his death, but I mean, okay, go ahead and get your bag, girl, shit. But yeah, the dudes quickly hightail it out of there, with Mito noting the fact that if the press finds them here, they'll be in trouble, which makes sense. Not exactly good for business to have a bunch of high-ranking members of your company intoxicated at a party where someone just fell off the side of the building. I imagine that would send your stock price plummeting faster than old boy's body. Anyway, downstairs, Iber, or Matsuda, gets picked up by a couple of paramedics.
While I'm aware of the fact that we're short-handed, I'm not very pleased about having to do this sort of thing myself.
Which is totally understandable. Anyway, the following day, Kira checks the newspaper and sees an obituary for Taro Matsui, confirming that he is, in fact, dead, which basically means that Matsuda is in the clear, which is great. Kira then gets a call, and it's from our boy Iver acting as Eraldo Coil, calling to discuss his terms. And the conversation, while brief, didn't exactly go the way Kira was expecting.
What? A $2 million advance and $8 million upon completion?
Damn, that's a whole lot of money, and that's on top of the fact that
even if we don't commission him, we have to pay him $2 million just to keep him silent.
Which is insane. I mean, it's not like they don't have it, but damn, that's a huge chunk of change that Ryuzaki is extorting them for. But, I mean, couldn't happen to a better group of people, right? Anyway, everyone's kind of whatever about the whole situation, not overly concerned or anything. Well, almost everyone.
This is getting ridiculous. I've had it. I want out of these meetings right now. I don't know who Kira is, and I don't care. I just don't want to get wrapped up in this and end up in jail.
Ooh, fucking yikes. You probably shouldn't have said that.
Hatori, I think you're going to end up dead tomorrow.
Whew, that's... Damn, and it wasn't even really a threat, you know? It's more just, like, a matter of fact. Like, there's no malice or anger or even regret about it. It's just indifference. Just a cold look in this dude's eyes as he condemns him to death. And what makes it worse is no one says anything about it. They're all just as straight-faced as the person who said it. No distinction, no coming on Hatori's behalf. It's just, yeah, dude's been annexed in the most uncomfortable kind of way because they're not even asking him to leave the meeting or anything. He's just allowed to stay because it doesn't matter anymore. It gets even more awkward when he tries to come back with,
"No, wait, I was only joking. I'm in. I'll see this to the end."
"Oh, sweetie, no, honey, you're done. There's no coming back from that. It's a wrap." But yeah, the reason I obscured the voice this time around is because the individual who said that is Kira, and I feel like the fact that he was the one to say it kind of makes it obvious that he is. I mentioned in my previous video that everyone here who's not Kira is fucked, that at the end of the day, they live or die by Kira's whim. So while they do have input on who will be killed in regard to boosting the Yotsuba group's net worth, they're still essentially the hostages, and we now know what happens when they get out of line. So the reason I'm saying that it feels obvious that this individual is Kira is because, I mean, who else but Kira could make a claim like that? Or better yet, who else but Kira would make a claim like that? Because if you're not the person with the notebook and you say that, then whoever does have it could ultimately decide to just not kill him. And you'd look kind of silly when he shows up to work the next day. If nothing else, it would make for a very awkward working environment going forward. Furthermore, the fact that no one stands up for him after this individual makes that comment is also pretty telling. Again, they are hostages who are forced to be here, lest they end up like Hatori. So what do they have to gain by speaking up right now, other than putting a target on their own back? I mean, if you're Kira, well, you can say whatever you want to defend him, if that's your prerogative. But if you're not, then your best option is to sit there and shut up, which is exactly what they all do. So it's the combination of these two factors, along with the comments they made back in episode 18, that make it increasingly obvious that they are Kira. But yeah, the meeting continues and it's as uncomfortable as you might imagine. Everyone continues discussing whether or not they'll use Eraldo Coil and cough up the money. Meanwhile, Hatori's just looking around, I guess trying to suss out whether or not he's good. Spoiler alert, he's not. Because when he does chime in again with,
"Exactly, we'll just have to pay him,"
no one even bothers to look at him. It's hard to watch, but I mean, it is what it is. So we flash forward a few days and find that Wedi has successfully infiltrated Yotsuba's security system.
Security level here is a joke.
Yeah, that much was made abundantly clear by Matsuda sneaking in the way that he did. But anyway, the final scene of the episode sees the task force watching and listening in on this week's meeting with the members of the Yotsuba group. And if you thought there was any chance of Hatori making it out alive, well, the chief's comment makes it pretty clear how things went down.
But if there's supposed to be 8, why are there only 7?
And roll credits. Anyway, that's the end of this episode. If you liked this video, then consider dropping a like, and if you really liked it, then consider subscribing. Anyway, that's it for this time. Until next time, friends, peace.